Today you learn how to make a card design from a Figma grid layout responsive in Elementor. Desktop is done in the previous video, now we develop the tablet and the mobile view. Hi devs and designers, my name is Heiko and on this channel I show solutions to all those who struggle to create pixel perfect designs with Elementor. What we'll do today will be as easy as winking for you to learn. And if you follow me along until the end, I'll show you a nice little trick how to make the cards more interactive. It will also level up your development skills and make your life with Elementor much easier. Alright, let's recap super quick. Before, on this series, we've built 3 cards from a Figma grid layout. We've achieved a pixel perfect result with a little help from the great designer add-on, which I explained in a previous video. Click the link if you want a backspin. But you can also just follow along, it's pretty easy as I said. Alright, what's on our to-death list? First, we'll adjust the visual grids for tablet and mobile, then we build a tab design, then the mobile design, and finally I show you a nice little trick. Alright, let's get going. When we look at the responsive design of our card sections, we see that we keep working with 12 columns, but there are some slight changes. You see the margin is different and also the gutter between the columns. So let's check out the grid layout in detail. We see when we go to tablet, the margin now changes to 24 pixels and the gutter shrinks to 16 pixels, and on the mobile grid also the margin shrinks to 16, whereas the gutter stays 16 pixels. With that in mind, let's put that in place in Elementor. So now we're here with our 3 cards. Let's turn on the page grid. We can do that with Command G on a Mac, String G on a PC, and then let's go to the user preferences to adopt it to the other breakpoints. So as we can see, if we also turn on responsive mode, that the offset here is 88 on desktop. And when we go now to tablet mode, we have to adjust it. We take 24 pixels and set the gutter to 16. And let's do that also for a tablet. The offset is way too much. We take 16 as we saw in Figma, and also the gutter we decrease to 16. And now if we turn on the preview mode and change between the breakpoints, we see that everything adapts very nicely. Before we move on, a note. There is a little drawback at the moment. If you want to use the visual grid responsively, you have to turn off one feature in the Elementor settings, and this is the additional custom breakpoints. When you have the additional breakpoints turned off, all works fine. Else, Elementor doesn't remember the settings and the adaptation between the breakpoints doesn't work automatically anymore. You have to manually change it accordingly, which is of course not great. But the very agile developer of the designer add-on is already on it with the Elementor team. Until they have fixed this, I suggest you to leave the additional breakpoints turned off and the grid will work fine between each breakpoint, like you can see here. But of course, make sure your design allows this and it looks good on the most important devices. Now with that out of the way, we go to our next step, which is to build the tablet design. In Figma now we can see that we don't have to change everything to get from the desktop to the tab design, because the main content width is the same. It also spans from the 2nd till the 11th. But the difference is the cards in desktop view have 3 columns or span 3 columns. On mobile view, they span 4 columns. So this is what we have to change. Back in Elementor, with the minor wrapper selected, we can now switch to tablet mode. And we see also here it spans from the 2nd to the 11th, which is perfect. And let's remember we work with a left inner container, which has no content at the moment, and a right inner container. And this is the one that spans too few columns. It needs 1 column more. So what do we do now? It's very easy. The very tiny thing we have to do is just to increase the width of this column to, let's say, 38 and I guess 0.5. And then if we hit preview and check it with the handle, we see we're done. All is done. Tablet view is ready. Perfect. Now let's do the mobile view. When we look at Figma, we see that the difference between the tablet and the mobile view is that the left column, which at the moment holds no content in Elementor, moves to the top, whereas our cards move to the bottom. And when we turn on the grid now, we see that the main content also spans 100%, and also the columns and the cards span 100%. Let's put that into place in Elementor. So here we have only a few things to do. Let's start with the minor wrapper. In tablet view we see it has it spans 83%, and this is not enough on mobile view because remember we need to have 100%. Now let's continue with the left inner container, the left column. It spans 49% and it must span 100%. Also the right inner container 100%. And when you remember, this content doesn't exist at the moment, so let's just turn it off for a second. And when we now hit preview and check the most, look at these numbers here, important breakpoints from 360 on until 430 something. That's at the moment the width of the most used phones when you hold it vertically. And it all works pretty smooth. Let's also check the other breakpoints. Tablet, desktop, looks good. Great, congrats, we have made the card layout responsive, easy as winking, isn't it? And as promised, when you stick with me until the end, I show you now a nice little trick. And this is how to make this card layout a little bit more interactive. We will implement this nice little backdrop shadow on hover. Side note, we will need Elementor Pro for this because we will use the custom CSS here. But I recommend Elementor Pro anyways if you plan to build better websites. You won't regret it. And if you need it, there's an affiliate link down in the description. And of course, it won't cost you 1 penny more if you buy it through it, but I will get a small commission in return for sharing my sweet knowledge with you. All right, thank you. Let's move on. In Figma, we can now check out how the cards should behave on mouse hover. Our designers have indicated it here. It gets this nice little backdrop shadow. Now let's turn on inspect mode and select the card, and I put myself over here. And now also make sure you have code selected, then we can see the CSS codes. Now select the code for backdrop shadow. You find it also in the description. Copy it. And now we have two possibilities. Let's begin with the first one. Make sure you have selected the first card container, and under advanced you see custom CSS. Here we write selector, that's the common way to address an element, and write these curly brackets, and in here we paste now the code we have just copied. And now you can already see the backdrop shadow, but we want it on hover, so we have to write hover. And now if we hit preview, this already works. Great, isn't it? Now this is the first option, and it is easier than the second one, but it has a drawback. For instance, you can copy it again and then go to each of the card containers and add this code. Okay, done. Preview. Now you see it works on all cards. But what if you want to change one thing on all cards? For instance, the opacity. You see, you have a different opacity, and now you like this opacity and you want to add it to all the cards. You have to go to each of the cards and change it. That's not the most intelligent way to do it. So here comes the second option. You use one CSS class on each of the elements and control the code from one central point. And because you can use this class several times in your project whenever you need it, developers call them utility classes. Okay, let's get to work and delete all the code. By the way, you can see this nice little workaround where we just click here and then you're directed directly to the custom CSS. Okay, and now we can add the utility class to each card. So we're here at card container 3. We go to advanced layout and we look for an input field which is called CSS classes. And here we think of a name. Let's name it card shadow. Remember, no dot at the beginning of the name. Copy it. Go to card container 2, advanced, custom classes, paste, card container 1, advanced, custom classes, paste. Now we go to the central custom CSS of Elementor, and this you'll find under site settings and then custom CSS. And now we paste the name, put a dot before it, because that's how it works, how you address an CSS selector. curly brackets, and then we can paste the code. For this, we go back to Figma, copy again the CSS code, go back to Elementor, and then copy it. And now we see it's already attached, so we have to add something, and that is again hover. And now you see it magically works. Isn't it great? And the cool thing is that you can also now change one thing easily, which affects all of the cards. Now we changed the backdrop opacity of the backdrop shadow, and this works absolutely fine. That is really great. Now let's do two more things to fine-tune this. First, we want a transition to make it look more smooth. So let's add the selector again, because we don't want it only on hover, we want it on both states, when you hover it and when you unhover it. Don't forget the curly brackets, and then you write transition, and now we have just to input a time value, for instance 300 milliseconds, and now you see that it works really smooth. Nice. Second thing we do to fine-tune it, we want that the mouse pointer changes when we hover over it, because we want to indicate that these cards are clickable. So we just write on hover cursor pointer, which is the command to just show these nice little hands. Okay, the cards are responsive and interactive. I hope you learned something and you're keen to learn more. And in the next video, I show you how to build the whole section, show you again how it looks like. We just finished this part, the cards, but there's more. There's on the left side, the content and the headline. How do we build this? See you again in the next video.